Hello, welcome back to a Battlefield 5 video. This time a little bit of a special episode, because I will look at the armory and at the customization options that you can purchase, namely the elites, which I think you have to purchase with real money. Although I might look at these as well, but let's start with these. Okay, so basically, for those of you who don't know, you buy these, and then you can replace your player model with them. And I think they also have special weapons, maybe? Kind of? I don't know. So, I'm going to look at them and review them. So my impression of these elites. Some of them might actually be quite interesting, others not so much. And we will see if there's maybe a historical background or an historical base for these. So, elite bundle. Let's start with SEAMUS here.
Where are we going, Camaraderie?
Indeed. Alright, so apparently, so if you buy these, you get the character model, obviously. Best squad animation that plays after you win best squad. So in this case, okay, it's doing like a boxing move. Oh, okay, and you can unlock a melee weapon. Okay, fair enough. So let's see. Don't ever stop fighting until the fighting is good and done. Okay. Full name, Seamus Byrne. Place of birth, Belfast, Northern Ireland. Okay. Allies, obviously. So you can only use that with the Allies at least. You can't run around as a German with that or as a Japanese guy. So, you say Special Operations Veteran. Now this already is odd to me in that Battlefield 5, as far as I know, was supposed to take you from the beginning of World War II to the end of it. So we're still kind of at the beginning. So how can he be a Special Operations Veteran? Because the real Special Operations type units really came about during World War II. There wasn't really a Spec Ops type stuff happening much in World War I, or between the wars. I would say the first real Special Operations kind of units were first of all German Fallschirmjäger and Brandenburger, like those guys who landed on the Fort Eben-Emael in gliders. You know, that was kind of a Spec Ops operation. And the first Allied ones were probably the commandos who raided European shores after Germany occupied France and the rest, or almost the rest of Europe, during 1940. So this is kind of odd. Rumors suggest he volunteered or was conscripted to the King's Guard. He's not telling. Okay, now the King's Guard I think is a real unit, but I wouldn't... they weren't really special forces in the traditional sense. They were just like an elite troop. Strong and anything but silent, Seamus lives to push a hard-fought front line with a well-timed put-down. And that must be some kind of sports reference I'm not getting. Extensive urban combat experience. Again, from what? Hits, runs, and hits again. Comfortable with explosions or explosives at danger close proximity even if his squad isn't. Sometimes acts before thinking through all consequences, leaving both himself and his squad dangerously overextended. Alright. So, I think he looks fairly realistic. I mean, it's not really a normal battle dress type uniform that a British soldier would have. But it seems, I mean, if he's a special forces type guy, you would think maybe he would not really use the normal standard uniform and have more leeway in, you know, in changing it up a bit. What I find a bit interesting is that in the character, like on this preview screen, he has a green beret, and here he has a black one. Now in FH2 we also have green berets, and those are used by the Royal Marine Commandos, which could be a nice backstory for this guy, making him part of the Royal Marine Commandos, you know. Would maybe get a bit closer to some kind of historical background. That being said, I don't think this one looks too bad. But I have to say, I haven't seen this one all that much, or if I did, maybe I didn't notice that. So I don't know if this one sells well. I mean, the animation is kind of cool, although it's not really that spectacular. I'm pretty sure I've never played Rainbow Six Siege, but I've seen animations from there that were a lot more like in your face. So I don't know if I probably wouldn't like to spend money on this as much. And I mean, this it's just a funny kind of close combat weapon. Well, this one isn't too bad, I would say. So, then we have Hannah, and I remember... I remember that I'm pretty sure I played with her on the Al Sudan map, and was played by a pretty good teammate. So let's see, character model. Now she's obviously some kind of partisan. I don't even need to read through that for that. I'm guessing a Free French partisan. Now, this is made kind of cleverly in that they wanted to have they wanted her to have this nifty-looking, very fashionable half jacket here, and in order to facilitate that, she is wounded on one side. So I guess that's kind of clever. I mean, since she's an irregular soldier, she doesn't really have a proper uniform, so there's nothing really that you can criticize there. Now, one thing I do find weird are these pockets, you know, on the trousers. You see that a lot in this game. And that wasn't actually all that common back then. Even most uniforms didn't have that, like proper army uniforms didn't have that. And I remember I recently read the Anthony Beaver book about Operation Market Garden, and there was an interview with a Dutch civilian, and she described being kind of puzzled by the American paratroopers because they actually had pockets everywhere on their uniform, and that was completely new to her. She never saw a uniform like that. So this is something that's kind of anachronistic, and you get the impression it's mostly included to look cool, much like the jacket here, to look cool to like a modern audience, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Animation, okay. Again, it's not that spectacular considering you have to pay actual money for this. And okay, that's a sweet-looking dagger, I guess. Okay, so let's read through that. Full name. Oh no, wait. Leave nothing to chance. Preparation, action, adaptation. All right. Bit generic, but fair enough. Full name: Hannah Delacroix. Delacroix. I never actually learned French. Place of birth: Paris, France. An instinctual soldier, escaped occupied France and now fights alongside British troops to free her homeland. Alright. No, this is kind of... I don't like that, because the thing is, after the Normandy invasion, during the liberation of France, there were often instances where FFI troops, you know, French partisan troops, fought alongside regular Allied troops, using their civilian uniforms, often using captured weapons or weapons that were airdropped, for example, often Stens, Brands, Piats, these kind of weapons were airdropped by the SOE, for example, to equip these. So it's not complete bullshit, but the story kind of makes the skin bullshit, because it's like, you expect us to believe that A, this woman escaped France, okay, fair enough, can happen. But then the British army included her in their ranks, but didn't give her a proper uniform. So they just took like a civilian woman with them. You know, like they had a good thing going, yeah, but kind of ruined it. Okay, skilled at evasion and reconnaissance, experienced in all sorts of long-range weaponry and optics. So it's supposed to be like a sniper character, which makes a lot of sense because women are usually not as physically strong as men, and sniping is, as far as infantry combat goes, probably less physically taxing than most roles, although that might be bullshit. Delacroix always means business, intense, dominant, controlling. Okay, she will always find the most effective method of attacking and follow through, even if it puts herself at risk. A gifted marksman, a natural-born leader, even with a linguistic barrier. Impatient, preference for action. Oh, that's weird grammar. Her willingness to push her luck can sometimes put the safety of those depending on her at risk. I guess, like, that animation kind of looks controlling, so I guess that's in character. Okay. Those two weren't so bad, but it feels like they kind of ruined it a bit with the backstory, but fair enough. So let's look at the Axis ones. Alright. Ernst Schubert, alright. My favorite weapon. Patience. Okay. From Munich, Germany. He doesn't sound like a Bavarian, I can tell you that much. So let's see, squad animation. Okay, that's kind of wannabe badass, but fair enough. K98 bayonet, we have that very same melee weapon, and it used to be in all kinds of kits. And then in, I want to say 2.3, like tons of new knives, especially for the Axis, were introduced, like the Hitlerjugend knife and the Heer knife and the Luftwaffe knife. And so these bayonets, I mean, we still have them as bayonets, but you can't use them really as knives anymore. I think there's like 1 or 2 kits where you get these, but these are only pickup kits, though they're actually pretty rare in FH2. But other than that, of course, completely historically accurate. That being said, seems weird that such a standard item, because every K98K basically came with a bayonet, that such a standard item would be only used by a special kind of character like this one. Now, from the looks of it, again, they have these pockets on the pants that just don't look like anything a German soldier would have worn. Other than that, he looks like an officer, and that kind of, again, that gives you a lot of leeway in how you can make your character model. Although, again, there's this general modern aesthetic with the pouches, with this like holster on his boot here. It's, to me, it looks slightly off. It looks slightly not World War II, and more like something like all those pouches. I don't know. Although that pistol holster is cool. So, a skilled marksman trained in infiltration, evasion and camouflage. Winner of multiple awards in target shooting and champion in the sport of military patrol before conscription. Now that is actually not complete bullshit, because there were a lot of, in Nazi Germany there were a lot of organizations that were supposed to prepare the populace for war, including military competitions even for civilians, so that makes a lot of sense. Now this here, trained in, it's so, how should I put it? This is so vague. Trained in infiltration, evasion and camouflage. Like, okay, every soldier is trained in that to a degree, so is he part of some kind of special unit? If so, why don't you put it down? He's part of the Brandenburgers. He was trained especially in infiltration, and he was used at the bridges in the Netherlands in order to infiltrate them before the Panzer divisions. Do something like that, like give it a real concrete and cool historical background. This way, it just seems so vague, So, okay. Cold, calculated, and always in control. Okay. Schubert is a man of few words, but his presence in the field becomes evident by the gaps left in the enemy team. Okay, now this to me kind of breaks character, because here it's like, okay, this is serious, right? This is a guy who is trained for war, and then here they use this word like in the enemy team, like it's a video game. Am I the only one thinking this? Like the guy who's writing these, I don't know, in the enemy team? In the enemy force, write it like that at least, but not team. A pathfinder that will often remove a threat himself more quickly than he can relay its location. So again, he seems to be some kind of Brandenburg type commando infiltrator guy, but it's left really vague. So yeah, kind of odd. So, let's see. Oh, okay, no, it's the Phantom of the fucking Opera. Wilhelm. Now, stuff like that existed, especially when people were maimed in World War I. They often made prosthetics like this, including for the face. So it's not completely inaccurate. And since this is an elite character, I guess if not everybody's using it, still, it does look kind of ridiculous. Usually I think these were also painted, and I wonder if somebody had received such a heavy wound in World War I, even if he had stayed in the military or was reconstructed after they expanded it, I'm not sure they would put him on the front line with that kind of injury where he has only one eye. It seems unlikely. That being said, again, with the nifty trench coat, and this uniform does look a bit like something maybe like a steampunk version of what a German officer could potentially wear. So he does look kind of like an officer. So maybe an officer, but even so, even an officer with that kind of wound wouldn't be allowed anywhere near the front lines, I can't imagine, except maybe like in 1945 when everything was lost anyway. It's kind of weird to me that you would play as an officer like that in a game like Battlefield. You would play as an infantryman, right? But okay, best squad animations. Okay, he does a cool glove move. I always wanted to wear gloves just to do that. German naval dagger. We don't have that one in FH2. It might well be historically accurate. Can't tell you anything about that, but makes sense. So if he has a naval dagger, I guess he's some kind of guy from the Kriegsmarine, although he doesn't necessarily look like it. Okay. There is no tolerance for fear in a time of war. I have to say, like, this writing, it doesn't really inspire a lot of, like, it doesn't seem unique. The characters aren't that unique. Like, if you look at this character and the one before, sure, this is a unique feature, but, like, the philosophy, at least from this, it doesn't really, they're all just generic badass, I guess. Full name, Wilhelm Tannstedt, place of birth, Hamburg, Germany. Now this would make sense if he was from the Navy or Kriegsmarine, because Hamburg is a big German harbor. Explosives and demolition expert, experienced tank hunter. Okay, yeah, the Navy always hunts tanks, of course. Kriegsschule military school graduate, specialization in siege tactics. Siege tactics? So he's an engineer? Okay. If it can be destroyed, Tannstedt will find a way to do it. A ruthless combatant. Again, ruthless. His straightforward manner commands respect from his squad mates, even if they have to maintain a safe distance. Bold, unflinching, seizes the initiative. It's like somebody wrote a letter of recommendation or something. Sets out to fulfill every mission requirement to the letter. Has a reputation of seeing explosives as the solution to every problem. Possible hearing damage. Oh, okay, so the joke is that this guy likes to blow things up, and he blew his own eye up, much like the black guy with the Scottish accent in Team Fortress 2, which makes this a lot more funny to me. Okay, so this is basically the Demolition Man from, or what was his name? The Demolition Man from Team Fortress 2. Okay, I will now picture this man with the Scottish accent and black. Now. And again, then why give him the naval dagger? Why not some kind of weapon associated with a pioneer? Or, you know, like a pioneer uniform? If you want to make him a demolitions expert, why has he... So if DICE came to me and said, okay, we don't care that much about history and so on, okay, fair enough. But could you design us a character? I mean, I can't design a character, but let's say they were stupid enough to ask me. Could you design us a character who's a demolitions expert and who blew up his own face? I would say, okay, we're going to do the blow up his own face thing, fair enough. But then, why don't you put a lot of explosives on him? Why doesn't he have dynamite sticks or whatever, you know? Why doesn't he have like a big green box which says 3 Kilogramm geballte Ladung, you know, one of those 3 kilogram charges that the German army used? Why doesn't he have that as part of his uniform? Why doesn't he have like a camouflage field uniform that he uses to get close to the enemy positions? Maybe like big wire cutters that he uses to remove, because he's siege expert, right? So he has big wire cutters here that he uses to cut through wire in order to get close to the enemy, and then he blows up their bunker. Bam, you have a character. But like this, it's like, if you had asked me, what is this guy? First instinct would have been, okay, Phantom of the Opera. Second instinct would have been, he's some kind of old World War I veteran officer who was once hit by a sniper in the trenches at the Somme or something, you know. And then the second one would be, this is... I don't know, some kind of clown. But you know what I mean? It doesn't match. This is not an explosives expert for me. You know what I mean? Alright. So there's more, apparently, which I didn't notice at first. Elite's Bundle. Okay, I remember her. That's the... Yeah, okay, that's the German exchange student that we fought with on Iwo Jima. Okay. If you believe you can stop me, try it. Again, it's so like generically badass, you know. Full name. Ilse Schattenwolf. That is preposterous. Now that's awesome, because Schattenwolf obviously means shadow wolf, which sounds like some badass name that like a teenager comes up with for a fantasy game. Shadow Wolf, Night Stalker, Assassin of the King, or some bullshit like that. But what makes it even funnier is that obviously it's in German, but then the first name Ilse, that's a completely like lame name, or not lame, but a completely outdated name that nobody today has. So when I hear the name Ilse, I'm picturing some old grandma having tea, because only old people have that name. So Ilse Schattenwolf, it's like somebody being called in English Erna Shadow Wolf. It's fucking preposterous, and I can guarantee you nobody is called Schattenwolf in German or in Germany. Well, I guess I can't guarantee that. Actually, I live in Kassel in Germany, and there's actually a tram line that is called Wolfsanger. So who knows? Who the fuck knows? Okay, place of birth Cologne, Germany. All right, fair enough. Best squad animation. Now, okay, she has to clean herself, I guess. Now, I'm not an expert on gas masks, because in FH2 we tend to use stuff that was used actively in the war, which in World War II wasn't really gas masks. But is that a World War II era gas mask? Because it doesn't look like it, I can tell you that much. Again, with the pouches here as well. And then Ilse's pickaxe. What? Decorated with a sword portipiece trap normally found on dress uniform swords. No one is sure if it's significant to Ilse, but the axe has likely seen more use than most. Okay, so she has an axe. Let's read this. Counter-espionage operative. Trained in psychological warfare? Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Now, first of all, counter-espionage would mean Abwehr, but I don't think they did much fighting, like on the front. And psychological warfare is, I think, a more recent concept. Now, they had propaganda back then. For example, they had like a rifle grenade, that you could put into the launcher that actually shot out propaganda leaflets, stuff like that. So that was what psychological warfare was back then. But the German psychological warfare was pretty ridiculous. You should seriously look at some of those leaflets that they pointed at like British and American soldiers. Usually when they pointed it at the British soldiers, it was stuff like, oh, while you're here in the front, the Americans are back home fucking your girlfriend, and then they had like these obscene drawings of that on them. It's pretty preposterous. I can't imagine, like, probably the British soldiers had a good laugh about that, and maybe a wank or two in the trenches, I don't know. Really weird stuff. Okay, quick, precise, ruthless. Oh no, that wasn't there, that was in the last one, but it would fit here as well. Always on mission. Adept in urban and rural combat zones. Okay, so everywhere basically. Except, I guess, on water. Sorry, Ilse, no chip for you. Qualified in environmental concealment and hand-to-hand combat. Alright. Antisocial tendencies. Questionable ability to work with others. Would be under inquiry if not for her accomplished military career. Squadmates favor allowing her to take point to strike fear into the enemy or to keep their distance. Alright. Now, okay, thing with this is designed to appeal to like edgy teenagers. I mean, this is supposed to be cool. Oh, she's antisocial. She's like a psychopath. She's cold, maybe cruel. Nobody knows what significance this weapon has. It's almost like implied, like she's like a serial killer who has like a favorite weapon, or maybe some kind of method to killing people. And now the thing is, I find this actually tasteless. And this is something that I generally feel about Battlefield 5's portrayal of World War II. It's so whitewashed and cleaned, and then they do stuff like that without realizing the significance. I mean, DICE, if you watch this, which I doubt, but you realize there were actual, like, psychopaths in the German army? Like, have you ever heard about the Dirlewanger Brigade or anything like that? You know, Dirlewanger was an SS guy that they basically got out of a concentration camp or prison camp or whatever where he was, because he was like a rapist and a pedophile, and they put him in charge of a military unit that basically plundered and raped their way across like Warsaw during the uprising. Like, that's not so funny and edgy when you realize that that is real life. You know, you're talking about a real war here, and you're making this for like teenagers. Like, oh, she's a psychopath. Yeah, it's not funny, man. It's just not funny. Also, it looks fucking ridiculous. I don't even have to. Do I have to say it? She looks like somebody out of Star Wars. But okay. And then we have Norman. So far, I like the Allied ones a lot better.
What's our mission, soldier?
Now this is 1-to-1 our NCO model from the North African maps. He has the LRDG kind of Arafat headgear. He has the slightly North African looking uniform. I mean, ours has shorts, you know, because desert is hot. And even the face looks a lot like Michael Caine, because the face of ours is modeled after Michael Caine, you know, Batman's butler, that guy, only young. And he really looks a lot like that. And, you know, LRDG forces, for those of you who don't know, were like Allied commandos, often New Zealanders, but also just British guys, I think also Australians sometimes, but I might be wrong, whose task it was to raid behind enemy lines in the desert. And they basically formed these convoys out of civilian trucks that they had outfitted with different machine guns, I think even anti-tank and flak or AA guns at some point. And then they would raid, for example, German or Italian supply installations, airfields, convoys, and so on. So they would drive in, blast everything with machine guns, and then vanish into the desert, which then became a lot more dangerous because the Italians formed their own units to combat these so-called Auto-Sahariana units, which were basically the same but Italian. And they had these battles in the desert, which were quite epic. And there's a lot of cool history there. So far I like this one best. Now again, the trousers with the pockets, just short, you know, but other than that, looks pretty cool. Looks like an LRDG guy. Squad animation. Okay, he does something with his mustache, fair enough. British naval dagger, probably also historically correct, I'm gonna assume. Now for that, like a Fairbairn and Sykes knife would maybe be cooler, because that was a commando weapon, but actually that might be in game already, so I don't know. So let's see, we will find a way, or we will make one. Again, it's like there's no character coming out of this. Full name, Norman Kingsley, the most British man to ever British. Place of birth, London, England, of course. Proven experience as an explorer in the most hostile environments. Again, it's wilderness survival instructor. Endurance beyond the norm. I can't actually do a British accent. Declined a commission to remain with his company. Oh, okay, yeah. I read this as he didn't want to remain with his company because it sounds like they were idiots or something. Expert rifleman. Uncanny ability to find unknown flanking routes in the most unfavorable terrain. Again, why doesn't this read part of the LRDG? He knows how to fight behind enemy lines from his truck that he outfitted with 3 machine guns, and he was part of 3 raids against Italian installations in the desert. Like, make it historical, give some historical context, not this generic crap here. Norman is considered a good luck omen among his fellow soldiers, as once he arrives, things seem to turn in his team's favor. A capable, understated leader when called upon. Again, this is so generic. Why not say, if you want to have this, he's supposed to be a good luck omen, then add some character to this. Make an example, because at one point he dove on a grenade and it didn't go off, you know, and then he kept the unexploded German grenade as a good luck charm, you know, and then you put a fucking German grenade here on his belt, and it's his good luck charm. That's cool, and that is from the top of my head. That's a story event that makes you connect with this character here. You know. Also, by the way, isn't that like a American nade? But never mind. So, again, I think this is the best one so far. But there's so much. It's too generic. They need to really make characters out of these people if they want to sell them. You know. But in fact, what would be even better is to take maybe actual historical characters from the war and turn them into elites. And I might have some ideas here. So, as all the best researchers, we will use Wikipedia, but here, possible elite for the Allies. Jack Churchill, who was of course best known for carrying both a longbow and a sword into battle. I think there's actually a photo on this page where he leads a charge while during a training exercise with a long sword. We actually have that sword in FH2 as well. He was part of France, Norway, Italy, basically everywhere. He did all kinds of crazy stuff, including coming ashore to the sound of a bagpipe, which again, that could be a cool part of a customization, although maybe it's too big to really be technically viable, but that's not for me to worry. Again, now that's a cool, unique guy where you can have, and the thing is, if you're worried about like his descendants being mad, call him George Cromwell or whatever, who cares, but keep the cool stuff, keep the longbow as like a customization. The close combat weapon that you can unlock is his sword, so he comes out with a big sword. That's cool. Now people would probably pay money for that, I'm pretty sure, and there would be some kind of historical background here. And look at the Wikipedia article. It even says the units he was part of, like 43 Commando. Then you can then you can have like insignia from that unit. Make it a bit historical. I'm not saying completely accurate, but give us something here. Now for the Germans, how about Dietrich von Sauken? Now that's German Wikipedia, of course. I mean, look at this motherfucker. He has a monocle. A fucking monocle right in his face. I mean, how more German officer can you look? Now, there's all kinds of stories about this guy. Basically, he commanded various troops on the Eastern Front, was heavily wounded at one point, fought during Operation Bagration, trying to save German troops, that kind of thing. Now, there's lots of stories there also about him not doing the Nazi salute because he saw himself as like a Prussian officer. Now, these kind of stories to me are always slightly eye-rolling, because it feels like people wanted to save their ass after the war, you know, after being part of a genocidal war. It's like, yeah, well, but we're just professionals. Where it's like, yeah, fuck you. But still, you know, if you want to include that kind of thing for the Vera rules, why not? So, you know, guy like this, with a monocle, a nice officer's uniform, could be an elite. You know, maybe have for him like a custom-made Luger, because this guy looks like he has a custom-made Luger, let's face it, you know, with like gold engraving or something. You know, you have a mildly historically accurate elite for the Germans here as well. Again, just some history in your historical game, some context and character for the models and the you know, characters. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about the elites in Battlefield 5. Maybe you'll agree, maybe not. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching and have a nice day.